Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Grow Your Moving Company podcast. I'm your host, Wade Swikle, owner of Two College Brothers Moving, Storage, and Franchising based here in sunny Tampa Bay, Florida, and also the co-founder of the Moving Titan Retreat and Tighten Up Training. And today's guest is Jim Stevens, somebody that we met at the recent Arizona Mastermind Retreat that we hosted back in June. Jim is a wealth of knowledge with everything commercial moving related. He is currently the COO of M3 Commercial, Muscular Moving Men's Commercial Division. And for those of you who've heard Josh Jurhill on the podcast in the past, Jim runs everything with his massively growing commercial side of that business, which is branded M3 as the COO. And Jim came from one of the largest independent, if not the largest independent moving companies in the country, JK Moving Services, where he served as vice president of JK's commercial division, I should say, having worked his way up from basically just being on the trucks to every position in the company, and is a wealth of knowledge with commercial moving. And Josh connected with Jim, and I'll let him tell that story, and brought him over to probably even sunnier Phoenix, Arizona. And here he is today on the Grow Your Moving Company podcast. I'm honored to have you on here, Jim. Thanks for joining. Tell us a little bit about your story in your own words.
Wade, thanks. Thanks for the introduction. That's very kind of you, very kind words. And I'm honored to be here. You've got such a great reputation, and I'm so impressed with what you and Chad have done, elevating the industry, bringing value to others.
Thank you.
For me, the story is probably very similar to many people that are listening. I got my start in 2001, 2002 on the trucks. I was a college athlete playing soccer at Lehigh University, and I hated lifting weights. So what do? You look for, ads in the paper for a good summer job that'll allow you to lift. And a company called Relocation Systems, which was a North American agent led by John Licata, was hiring laborers at $11 an hour. And it beat the other $9 an hour ads. So I decided to go and interview, and I experienced how probably so many in the industry still hire, which is funny. Jim, do you have a pulse? Can you be polite? Yes, you're hired, $11 an hour. We'll see you tomorrow morning. Don't be late. No, it was a little bit different than that. But
and what year was that?
That was 2000. And you know what? That was 2002.
Yeah, $11 was big money back in 2002.
That's right. So I joined the team, and I can remember the first day on the trucks, getting to 4:00 in the afternoon, bodies completely worn down, going, oh my goodness, we got another 2-3 hours to go. And in obviously the summer heat, but it was a heck of a workout. And thanks to my summer job, I reported to Lehigh in preseason, and I was probably the fittest on the team. I was running like an animal. I could lift, having not been in the weight room all summer, but running on the trucks. I had good money in the bank account for spending money. That was my agreement with my parents, that the work that I put in over the summer, I'd be able to support myself in my first year in college. So, and then I interned with the team in the winters. So Robin Walden was a lovely lady in HR, and I talked to her before departure and said, look, I'd love a winter job. And she allowed me to come in and do some HR administrative things. And the following summer, I supported her in hiring and even firing crew members. So I gained that experience as well. And then, John and the team kind of found that I was a Swiss Army knife and said, we need some support in dispatch. Can you come in? And, for me, it was just, I'm an Army brat. My dad was a West Pointer. He's my hero. And it was all about, having the right attitude and applying yourself. That was my mantra growing up. And I find that as we've continued to scale M3, and certainly JK can attest to this, what a juggernaut, what an incredible organization that organization continues to be. But, the prerequisite in our industry is you have a great attitude and be willing to work hard. And in my experience, you can go pretty far. So fast forward, I was playing minor league professional soccer. And my agreement with my dad is that he would allow me to, he would support me because I was making 250, $300 a game. He would continue to support me as long as I progressed. And sure enough, after year one, I didn't have the ability to progress. I just wasn't good enough. And so I'll never forget, in the spring, after a few trials fell through, my dad said, okay, it's time for you to go out and get a real job. And so I'm interviewing and a bunch of sales jobs with IT companies, and Robin Walden got wind of it. She called me, and I can remember the conversation because it went something like, Robin, it was a great run in college, but I'm not gonna rejoin the company. And her feedback probably changed the trajectory of my career. And it was, Jim, so many come in and they need to learn the industry, and it takes them 18, 24 months to understand. You've been on the trucks, you've worked in almost every capacity of the organization. You have a greater understanding than anybody else. My gut tells me if you rejoin us in a sales capacity, you'll hit the ground running and you'll begin making money a little bit sooner. And that really resonated with me. So I met back with John and he hired me, and I was in COD residential sales. I worked very closely with a dear friend of mine, Brian Martin, who's now with the Advanced Group out of New York. He's a stud in our industry. And we were kind of the dream team that Relocation Systems assembled under the tutelage of John Anderson with Serva, who's a channel vice president and a guy that I deeply admire. He's done it really well in the commercial game. So he kind of took Brian and I under our wing, and we launched kind of a mobility services group within Relocation Systems. And that was my first nibble into commercial. But I wouldn't even say we were crawling at that point. We were babies, but we were winning office moves. And so the dream team of Brian and Jim would come along at 21 years old, and we'd go out and we'd work the jobs and support our customers. And JK acquired Relocation Systems later that year, and Chuck, in his brilliance, analyzed the business. Majority of team members went over to the residential group at JK. Brian and I shifted over to the commercial services group. So I started at JK January 1, 2008. And that's when it began, I would say. No disrespect to previous to that. It's just anybody that's worked with JK, pound for pound, and I've said this before, Wade, but JK moving from January 1 of 2008 until, present day, when you talk about scaling a commercial group, doing it right, having the systems and processes dialed in, having a really, really good leadership team. I would say the leadership team early on at JK was it was great for me to witness, because the leadership team in place at the commercial services group from early 2008 until the end of 2009 was not good. And that allowed me to see, leadership qualities, characteristics, principles of, things that didn't work in the industry. And Chuck saw it as well. JK's bottom line was horrific. And it was a tough time, right? 2008, right, Wade?
Yeah.
But it was I would call it the Wild West of the East Coast. The leader that was appointed at JK's commercial services group allowed people to do pretty much whatever they wanted. There was really no standardization. And then a lot of what was done was, I think it was a great front row seat for me to see how you don't want to lead a team. Leader was turned over. Chuck kind of came into the business unit and really went hands-on in late 2009. And this is where I think Chuck, those that know Chuck Kuhn, he's brilliant. I mean, he's a very shrewd businessman, but he's absolutely brilliant. I would say probably the best that's done it in our industry from my perspective, because I also got a front row seat to his leadership principles, characteristics, mindset from 2009, late 2009 until I left about 10 years later. And what JK did was just skyrocket. So I got a front row seat to how terribly run an organization or a business unit can be, and the drag on the bottom line is a byproduct. In comes somebody that knows what they're doing, pours into people, puts processes in place, puts pieces in place, business unit skyrockets. And so I was a part of a team that kind of allowed, from a sales perspective, allowed things to continue to blossom. And what Chuck did was appoint incredible leaders. Rocco Balsamo was always there. I consider him a business father from a sales mentorship perspective. And then Vince Barano was brought on site online. Ted Isaacson, incredible leader, God rest his soul. John Tice, and these are legends in the game. Vince being the greatest sales mentor that I've ever been around. His teaching style and ability to just pour into others and bring out the best in them was unique,
Yeah,
and a massive part of the growth.
I've had Vince on the podcast, and he's come to some of our events, and he's impressive. We employed a lot of his hiring tactics for our sales team just from that one conversation.
There you go. So you see, I think Wade, and you can attest to this, as successful as you are, and Chad can attest to this, and a lot of the titans and those in the industry. We all need people to kind of turn back and put their arm out and say, "Come here, young fella. I've got your back, and I'm gonna pour into you and make you the best that you can be." And I am a proud byproduct of that. Jim Stevens is who he is today. If there's any success attributed to me, it's a byproduct of others pouring into me. Because Wade, part of that story as well in the journey, and Vince and John and Chuck and Rocco were such a big part of this for me. But you are talking to the most unemotionally intelligent human being on planet Earth at one point in my life. And a quick story, we're at a sales event, and there was a personality index that was sent out. This is in Dulles, Virginia. This is I would probably put it at 2015 or 2016. So it's our entire team. We've got an entire table, and there's hundreds of people in the room. And so we've inputted our personality tests, and the story goes something like this. It starts off with the moderator getting up in front. Everybody knows that they've submitted their personality test. And he says, how many people know Susie? And the table behind us goes wild. We know Susie. Susie's the kind of person that if you needed a helping hand at any point, you could call Susie at 10 p.m., 2 a.m., 5 a.m., something like this. Susie is the person that gets up and says, "I've got your back. I'm going to see you." And the table explodes. They all standing ovation, clapping. That's Susie, high-fiving Susie. Everybody's like, "Man, I want to meet Susie." And then he goes, "Jim Stevens." And this is a time in my life, Wade, where through all the sales success, all the outer success that people saw, man, it was a very, very dark time. I was completely overdriven. I never missed a sales target, but it came at the expense of others. Frankly, I was the kind of guy that would charge up the mountain and throw anybody off the mountain to achieve a goal. And anyway, so my heart dropped, and I'm like, this is not going to be good. And he goes, "Jim Stevens, this guy right here." And I put my hand up reluctantly, and he goes, "Jim Stevens on the empathy meter is a 2 out of 100. And everybody at JK, I was close with some, some really didn't like me, frankly, well deserved. And many turned and they were like, "Yep, that's Jim. He's an unempathetic, son of a gun." And he goes, Donald Trump's empathy meter is a 3. So the difference between Donald Trump and Jim is that Jim would have fired the person before Donald Trump would have fired the person. And I'm just like, I think he turned it to where it was a slightly positive.
I was going to say, that's in front of a lot of people. That's got to not feel so good.
Yeah, but it's a big part of the story, Wade. And I say that because JK, Chuck, Vince, John, Rocco, they got me help. I worked with a gentleman named Bob Slevin, who was a business coach, and I highly recommend anybody, trying to work on what's between the ears. And I needed it bad, Wade. I needed it bad. But I got coaching. I got development. I got to open my eyes in the world of emotional intelligence. And I not only got to open my eyes there and work on putting it into practice, but I had just wonderful people around me supporting me. Again, Vince, Rocco, John, Chuck. They all were invested in making me a better human being. And I would say over the course of the 2016 until I left in 2019, it was a massive, massive shift in my mindset. And so when I came out to M3, I'll never forget Vince. We went and grabbed breakfast right before I left. And I'll never forget Vince, his parting words as I left JK and being comfortable before jumping into the deep end. He said, he calls me Jimmy. he said, Jimmy, don't you forget that when you walk into Phoenix, they don't know who you were. They don't know your past. You have a blank whiteboard, a blank slate, and you have an opportunity to write a new story. And I've told that story many times to team members in our enterprise. And I think some can see the intensity that I bring on a daily basis, and they understand that that's a part of my story. But I've worked very, very hard to play my part in being a Vince, a Rocco, a Chuck, a John Tice, as opposed to the Jim Stevens of 2016 and previous. So that was a long-winded story, but it's been a journey, and the beauty for me has been in the fact that I'm 41 years young, and I'll never stop working. I've got another 60 years to go, and then I'll still be tinkering and doing stuff. And I think that I've realized that perhaps the next 30, 40 years, my purpose is going to be to give back and support others that are trying to do it right.
I love that. Hey movers, it's Wade Swikle, and you're listening to the Grow Your Moving Company podcast. If you've ever wasted money on marketing to the wrong homes, listen up. This is why I use USA Home Listings. They're the only platform in the moving industry built by movers that not only has new home listings and under contract listings updated daily, but now offers enhanced data that can eliminate vacant homes and give you phone numbers and emails for both homeowners and realtors, giving you multiple ways to connect and close more jobs. Their vacancy AI tool removes empty homes so there are no more wasted mailing efforts, and their Tier 2 data takes it further, providing highly accurate contact details for both homeowners and realtors for email, phone, and social outreach. The result? Higher conversions, stronger ROI, and more book jobs with less spend. Check out usahomelistings.com because it's where real movers get real leads. The fact that you had all of these lessons along the way, these mentors along the way that helped to shape, I think you put it perfectly, is that you're the byproduct of so many great leaders that came before you that built you up into who you are and what you've been able to do with F3 and the massive growth that you've seen since taking that over. It seems like you took the right things out of those lessons from those leaders and applied it and poured rocket fuel on that vision that really didn't even exist before you came in. And I'm curious, what you mentioned that there was bad leadership up to one point, 2008, 2009. What are the don't do's that a leader that's aspiring to learn the right way to do it need to avoid? Because I think, a lot of us are byproducts of our first early on experiences in work or in life. And I think sometimes for better or for worse, we are fortunate enough to learn good habits, or, most people are probably, not learning the best habits. But like, what shouldn't you do as a leader that you saw? How not to lead?
Yeah, good question, Wade. For me, I think, let's not misconstrue it. A privately held company is not a democracy. In fact, it's probably a dictatorship if you think about it. A sole proprietorship, a partnership. It is run by a few, the ownership group. I think I got a front row seat to a solid dictator that really, really, really leaned into the fact that that individual was in control and frankly suffocated the life out of any potential success. Led with fear. I can remember being concerned at that time in my career to go in and have a necessary conversation. I could not avoid the conversation. I needed something. And it was a very flat organization. So it was basically the reps and then the individual that was in charge. And I remember literally going, oh my gosh, I do not want to have this conversation, because he would let you know that he was in charge. And again, for me, I would have to thank this individual if I ever came across this individual again, because it was a front row seat to what not to do. So while I lead with the fact that our companies are not a democracy, the term dictatorship paints a picture as well. And if people perceive you as a dictator, that has a negative connotation.
Mm.
So I I love the picture that kind of the reverse hierarchical triangle creates. My job at M3 Commercial as the managing partner is to support our leadership team. Their job is to support our management team. Their job is to support our great mover athletes, our project management supervisory team. Their job is to support our base level mover athletes. I call the shots. My leadership team really at this point calls the shots. I've got some oversight, but at this point I'm almost autonomous to the decisions that they're making, and they're making great ones. I'm stewarding them, but supporting your next level leaders is a mission critical component to success in business. That's what I realize. Doesn't matter if you're selling popsicles, if you're a landscaper, if you're selling commercial real estate services, you're an architect, or you're a mover. And you hear the coin term servant leadership,
Mm-hmm.
and I like it. I think it paints a really, really good picture. Ultimately, the entire purpose of being a manager is to honorably steward the futures of the people that you're responsible for. And so when you think about that, there's a personal life to the individual that you're stewarding, and there's a professional life to the individual that you're stewarding. What Vince, Rocco, Chuck, and John did was they were very, very intent on rounding out the man that was Jim Stevens. Chuck said this. He said it, when I would meet with him on a quarterly basis, which meant a lot to me, that he took the time as an industry juggernaut to say, you are important enough that I want to meet with you on a quarterly basis. It was something that I looked forward to. I got an opportunity to have a one-on-one with somebody that I deeply admired. And with Vince, it was weekly meetings. With Rocco, it was daily interactions. Both of them probably daily. John, it was frequent. The door was always open. But Chuck, we'd meet, and Chuck to this day, I'm sure, still walks the warehouse with a cup of coffee, connecting with the team members, holding the pulse on all things great at JK Moving. But Chuck said, you're one of the guys that I actually encouraged to slow down. And there was care for the man outside of the building, along with the man that I was becoming inside the building. And so I think when treating your employees' futures honorably, it's not that it's an even 50-50 split, but you've got to know the man, or you've got to know the woman. And I've got a member of my team that I'm extraordinarily proud of. And the majority of time that I pour into her intentionally, I'm encouraging her to not be working all the time. What are you doing that's fun? We had a same page yesterday. The majority of the conversation was, when are you going to take a vacation? To which the response was, I'm not going to take a vacation. And frankly, for the next 5 to 10 minutes, I encouraged her to consider taking a vacation. She's somebody that wants autonomy to be able to work from home. And yesterday, as we got out of our same page, because we caught up over breakfast, she said, I may go home. I said to this individual, you don't need to tell me that. If you're in the office and you want to get up and go and you want to work from home, here's what I can count on. You're always going to be responsive, and I'm not expecting you to be, but you're always going to be there. You're always going to serve the best interest of the organization. You're somebody that we appreciate and we want to continue to develop and elevate, frankly, get to the next level. So treating your team's futures honorably is a major, major part of our focus and initiatives. And it's part of what makes our culture unique. Josh and Justin too are incredible partners. Majority of partnerships don't work. I understand, and I get a unique front row seat to why the Josh and Justin partnership works so well. They perfectly offset each other with strengths, and they are like brothers. And I get to be for me, it's very cool to be a third wheel and in the room, doing what I can to help them operationalize their vision. And it's been neat. When I came on board in 2019, we were a $6 million player, and we're about to take on 30 million. And I would say this, that's not Jim, Josh, and Justin. Leadership is influence. My job is to influence others to be the best version of themselves that they can be. Rocco, Vince, Chuck, John did that with me. My teammates, Josh, Justin, do that with me. My job is to curate that for others and create a culture that people want to be a part of. We've got former team members that have moved on that come back every once in a while, and it's a hug fest, Wade. It's a hug fest. They come in and come on, bring it in. How you doing? How's your family? What's going on? Could M3, could Muscular Moving Men be an organization such that 20 years from now, people look back like I do in that late 2009 through when I departed in 2019 at JK?
That's inspirational. I've read a lot of John Maxwell, and what you're saying is perfectly in alignment with a lot of his teachings. And you mentioned something interesting about the dictator, and I think a lot of people, they get handed a management title and they put the little nameplate on their desk, and they all of a sudden, all right, you do this, you do that, you do this. Every decision comes through me, and it bottlenecks. And at the same time, I look back at my childhood going through school or whatever, and some of my favorite teachers were the strictest teachers. And in the beginning, I didn't like them very much. But when I look back, I'm like, dang, like this one taught me algebra when I didn't think I could learn algebra. And it was Greek to me when I first got into it. Or whatever, writing. I used to get the papers back from our essays in, I don't know, my junior year of high school, and they were covered in red ink until one day I finally figured it out, and she used mine as the example for the class. And next thing you know, years later, I wrote a book, and I gave a shout out to that one teacher that I didn't necessarily like going to her class because I knew that I was in for it. But I'm curious, sometimes being strict is giving people what people need versus what people want. But how do you draw that line between somebody who's strict and disciplined and commands discipline and respect versus that line between who's a dictator that thinks that they're being the former?
Yeah, there's a fine line, Wade. I would say this: we're not for everyone. We're not for everyone. On a mission to be somebody's favorite, inevitably, you're going to be also the most hated. The goal is that you're most hated by a super ultra minority. I attended a speech back in 2016, and it was awesome. It was all about a mission to be somebody's favorite versus to be the best. You'd rather be somebody's favorite than the best. Well, that's interesting. But the underlying principle is what I just mentioned. We're humans. That's the challenge with this world. We all interact with one another. We all have different personalities, different strengths. If you look at personality index testing, there's strengths to every personality trait, and there's blind spots to every personality trait. It doesn't make one better than the other. There are strengths across the board. There are also blind spots across the board. For us, our standards are unapologetic. Our core values, we are unapologetic about. We have certain baseline foundational principles that it is dictatorish. Wade. But let's just cast it out there. All business owners, you have to be dictatorish in our industry as it relates to things like theft, which, knock on wood, we really haven't dealt with. But I'm sure we will at some point. But here's the deal. If you steal or you attempt to steal, you are out. You're out. In fact, we want to find you. We want to usher you to our competitors as quickly as possible. And hopefully you don't join our competitors. Hopefully there's corrective action that's taken so that you can be a positive contributor to society. So there's base levels of what you will tolerate. And in my experience, Wade, people want to join and be a part of a winning culture and a winning team with unapologetic standards that force people to level up.
Hey everybody, Wade here, and I've got an awesome game-changing announcement for you. Now, I know a lot of you guys are constantly asking, how do we get more leads? How do we get better leads? You're tired of spending way too much money for pay-per-click or buying leads or LSA, whatever it may be, only to get low-paying customers that become a headache with small moves, and you don't get an ROI on those jobs. Well, the exciting news is that our friends at Moversville have just launched a new product called the Realtor Referral Engine, where they not only get in front of realtors, but they command direct response, replies, and referred business. I'm super pumped about this, but don't just take my word for it. My friend Austin Yarborough over at Central Coast Moving and Lucky Day Moving and the Moving Army, I know he's got a bunch of them, just like me. That's why we're friends. has gotten over 40 direct replies from realtors in his first month of using the realtor referral engine from Moversville. And then there's Scott with ABC Moving Systems. He's booked over $30,000 in work and made over 20 new realtor connections. What can an extra $30,000 a month do for your business? Here's what makes this kind of marketing different. These aren't just one and done jobs. These are realtors who keep referring large jobs, can introduce you to the other members of their brokerage, and then those moves can start referring more and more jobs. You have to stay front of mind though. So if you want to learn more about the Realtor Referral Engine by Moversville, head on over to moversville.com and book a quick 15-minute call with my friend Tim, who runs the place. He'll know exactly what your business needs to get set up. He can do it all to make sure that you're getting high ticket jobs at a fraction of the cost of other marketing sources. I think you're going to be happy that you did that. Don't sleep on this one. Go check out moversville.com. Look for the 15-minute intro call with Tim and report back with your results so that I can talk about them here on the show. Thanks for tuning in.
Bill Belichick, great example. You go talk about Bill Belichick in the meeting room. Not a nice guy. Tom Brady's come out and said, man, he would rock my world. Even after all those Super Bowl championships, you better believe he would, because the standards were unrelenting to continue to push the envelope. You go to Tom Brady and his New England Patriot teammates and ask them if they'd prefer to be on another team while they were winning Super Bowl championships. My gut tells me, Wayne, you probably have one or two on that team. Woe is me. This isn't the right fit for me, that probably would put their hand up and go, yeah, I know I won Super Bowls, but I would have rather been on a more cushy team. We are talking about the ultra minority, though. The overwhelming majority turn and go, wait, if I could do it again for the rest of my life, every day for the rest of my life, I'd be in that meeting room getting yelled at about how I need to pay attention to details a little bit better. But there is a fine line. There's awareness. I have needed to apologize for my fire and brimstone actions. In fact, yesterday to a key member of our team, I called him after getting out of the office and said, hey, apologize for the frustration. That wasn't a part of me before I got help. The part of me before I got help from an emotional intelligence perspective, Wade, was I don't need to apologize because of the results that I'm putting up, because of the title that I have. I'm the new me is, this is a person that's doing the best that they could, that deviated from our processes, and it's okay because that's going to happen. There was a little bit of an overreaction, and you need to be aware of that, and you need to course correct. You need to be the first to put their hand up and say, hey, apologize. Let's move forward together. So look, it's a challenge. Leadership is really, really hard. Hardest job in the world, sales. Hardest job in the world. Go out and hunt, eat what you kill. On the commercial side of things, where do you find leads? Where do you find opportunities? We talked about this, Wade, but we did. You know, me and you can launch a company in North Dakota. We'll call it, Wade Stevens Moving. And we're going to go and pummel every for sale sign that's there. And we're going to start getting calls because Wade's a charming guy and he's wonderful. And not only that, he's got an incredible reputation. He's a titan, right? So we're going to generate leads and we're going to book business. Wade, let's go up to North Dakota and find commercial moves. What do we do? How do we do it? So sales is not for the faint of heart. Next hardest job, in my opinion, leadership, ownership, steward others, manage others. Because I think there's a misconception, Wade, that managers just need to audit tasks and ensure that tasks are getting done. If you have an organization where your managers are just task auditors, you have a floundering organization, or it's about to flounder, because the manager's role is to increase the level of performance amongst the team, to get C's to C pluses, C pluses to B minuses, B's to A's. Realize that this gentleman or this young lady is a C, and that's not the level of performance that we're looking at, and that is her or his ceiling. So we need to usher them off the team. Leadership is hard, man.
It is definitely hard. You have to have a lot of difficult conversations. And, I'm firsthand, I'm guilty of being too nice sometimes and not basically wanting to upset the person, whether it's a customer and I give them too much of a discount, or it's an employee, and I'm like, all right, now don't do this again. Those are challenges that I think a lot of business owners have, a lot of entrepreneurs have, because we're just kind of this ADHD conglomeration of pie in the sky ideas and dreams, and we want everything to be done, and we don't always know exactly how to do it or how to have that conversation, or we know what we need to do, but it's like, man, I really like that person. He's a good guy. Let's give him one more try. How do you overcome that by, handling the humanity, but also enforcing those standards as rigorously as you need to do to win?
Good question. Disappointment lies in that gray area between expectations and reality, Wade. So when an employee is off performance, somehow they're in that gray area between what your expectations are and what the reality is of what they're delivering. So if you think of it as an accordion, when you hire somebody, okay, this is the challenge with hiring. You come in and Jim interviews with Wade. Wade, if you wanted to hire somebody to do something commercial for you, you want to hire me. I'll interview I'll be dynamite for you, man. I'll say all the right things. There's a lot of people that can do it. So from an accordion perspective, when you want to hire Jim, we're here. We're in lockstep. You're like, man, I got my guy, or I got my gal, right? And then this starts happening. So my recommendation, it's constant communication. Same pages should be regular with the team members that you're working with. This was Vince's brilliance in his sales management style, in pouring in and elevating the team. He was always available, always available. There was never there were times that I called him 12 times and he was responsible for 12 plus reps, 12 times in a day, every time picking up the phone saying, how can I help you? There was a recognition of his role, that he was a critical gateway to my success. And in order for there to be success, the support function always had to be on. Then there was a proactive approach from Vince to schedule ongoing, reoccurring connections, same pages. How we doing? How's Chantel? How are the children? You need to stop working, Jim, to all hours of the night. I'm getting emails at 5 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, and I got an email from you at 11:10 on Friday night. Jim, I know your business is skyrocketing, but you have got to take time for yourself. You've got to shut it down, right? So the relationship between manager and employee, in this instance, Wade, you're a team member, right? And it's an accordion. Your job as the leader, it is the leader's responsibility. It is the leader's responsibility to work on marrying this up, getting it back closer, closing the gap. How do you do that? In my experience, it's constant communication, same pages, being very, very direct in what you expect. So I've been around managers. I talked openly about 2008 through middle of 2009. The feedback that I would get from the leader that I don't want to be like was very vague. It was emotionally driven. Frankly, it was emotionally off the charts, screaming, going crazy. But if you dissect the critical feedback, it was a bunch of mush, Wade. There was nothing tangible that me in my early 20s could take away from the conversation. It was, you're just not doing your job. And frankly, I didn't have the tools. Now I've got better tools to turn. And if Wade, you turn to me and say, Jim, you're not doing your job, I would say, hey, Wade, thanks very much for the critical feedback. Acknowledge and empathize. Hey, I understand that I'm off target right now. But I would also ask for specificity, because I can't work with the feedback you just provided me. Wade, can you elaborate with specific examples of what you're talking about so that I can better understand and ensure that moving forward, I can do a better job of hitting the target? In my experience, the dictators that are not worth following continue with great feedback. You're just not doing a good job. You should be doing better. How do I work with that? Jim, I noticed when I walked into the warehouse, it was not up to our standards of excellence from a cleanliness perspective. Here's what I mean. Stand up. Let's go ahead. Do you have 5 minutes? Let's go ahead and take a walk. And you literally walk through and you go, see the book carts, see the dollies, see the building protection. The book carts are expected to be over here. The building protection is expected to be put away. In fact, you know what we're going to do? We're going to create a system where we're going to get the warehouse to where it's perfectly in place, and we're going to photograph everything.
Mm.
And we're going to put those around our warehouse, and they give you the answers to the test, Jim. Your job is to look at those pictures, and when you come in to start your shift at 5 o'clock in the morning, your job is to get the warehouse back in line with the pictures that we've taken. Is that something? And then you need the commitment. You need the commitment factor to be something, to be there. Jim, is that something that you can deliver? Yes, I can. I can do that. Now we've taken the gray. Jim, you haven't done your job. The warehouse looks dirty. Now you've tagged specificity and you've up-leveled the team because you've been very, very direct and transparent with your expectations. Very, very small, almost a borderline silly example. And then there's 1,000 of them in a moving company that you're making.
Mm-hmm.
But too many managers, especially because we're in a low margin business, are dealing in generalities. You've got to increase your performance. Nobody knows what that means. I mean, further, it also runs the risk, Wade, that when cyclical demand sets in, what you're basically conveying to the employee is you need to do your job better. That typically has an underlying tone of business performance. So when cyclical demand happens and business increases its level of performance, you have a lot of managers that turn and go, everything must be going great.
Not all.
You're missing a massive gap in margin efficiency. You can do things better just because you're lacking the ability to really go in and specify what you expect, and then putting measurement tools in place to ensure that the process can be delivered every day seamlessly.
I think that's a really good idea for any moving company that can implement pretty much right away with the pictures of what it's supposed to look like. Maybe this is the back of the trucks, how the back of the trucks are supposed to look like. You know, we hang pictures around our office of this is what properly protected staircases look like. This is what a properly wrapped item looks like. And it's just that constant reminder to where you can't have an excuse. You don't know what it's supposed to look like. And I like that about the warehouse too. We haven't done it in the warehouse. And that's, as soon as you said that, I was like, man, yeah, last couple of times I went over there, it's not where I want it to be, but that's like, it's such an obvious answer.
Yep. If you go into JK's warehouse, you can eat off the floor.
Yeah. And I've been inspired. I've been inspired by pictures of their warehouse that I've seen with the training house and everything.
Yeah. But no pictures, Wade. What I just mentioned, there's no pictures. So how does somebody like that juggernaut organization doing well over $100 million in enterprise revenue on an annual basis, and you can eat off the floor of every single facility? Standards of excellence. The standard of excellence is raised. Our level of tolerance is less than others in the industry. We don't care where you've come from. You're in a new organization here, and from leadership down, the expectation is excellence. In everything you do, we hire based on excellence. We fire based on excellence. We make decisions based on excellence. So again, I'm referring back to JK, but I spent a long time at JK. I'm 7.5 years in at M3, and it's been really cool to be nimble enough to instill a lot of those values in the organization. But again, front row seat, 2008 to 2019 laid a base foundation from a just the ability to learn. That was something I reflect back on, and I'm so happy that I was a part of that team. And
I want to take a second and tell you all about Tighten Up Training. As a co-founder, we've spent months and months and months and a lot of money pooling together resources from some of the best moving companies in the world. And we're excited to bring this to an online platform available to any mover to use at an affordable price. Tighten Up Training has over 200 videos, including mover training, your highest turnover position, so that you can reduce claims, streamline operations, give your team the tools to perform at the highest level of service that generate repeat and referral business and allow you to charge higher prices, as well as sales training, marketing training, business development, leadership. We're adding more content as we speak. We've got legal training in there. We've even got door-to-door training for the moving industry, thanks to Lenny Gray at the Moving Titan Retreat. We've seen a massive explosion of moving companies jumping jumping on to Tighten Up training since the last retreat, and people are loving it. And when you sign up and mention this podcast, we're going to give you a free 6-week onboarding course in order to learn how to hold your team accountable and get the entire team on the platform so that you can have the best off-season and summer season that you've ever had. So go to tightenuptraining.com, schedule your free demo today, and look forward to tightening up.
And we'll always, in conversations like this, I will always go out of my way to honor the fact that they played a massive, massive part in my development.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. What it sounds like is that culture is self-perpetuating at this point, to where they don't need the pictures anymore. It's just this is how it's supposed to look. Don't be the person that messes up how it's supposed to look. And I've noticed that as well, just in my own home. You know, we have a housekeeper that comes in once a week, and when she comes in, everything is nice, neat, and tidy. And I find myself rinsing the dishes and putting it in the dishwasher instead of sticking it in the sink, because I don't want to be the first one to mess it up. You know, I want to keep that standard. But then, you know, towards the end of the week, you know, you get busy, things happen. You got a couple dishes in the sink. What's one more? What's another fork in there? She's coming in a couple of days. And I think that principle applies to the moving company. You know, you've heard probably the stories of how Rudy Giuliani took over New York City and the windows were broken and the crime was rampant. As soon as they fix the windows, crime goes down. It's a little more complicated than that, but just to give the gist of it. And that culture perpetuated itself for years and years to come. And I think that can happen in your warehouse, in your trucks, on the job sites. But my question to you is, since you've seen it where the windows were quote unquote broken, or the dishes were quote unquote piling up, and somebody came in, whether it was Chuck or whoever the leader was that instilled the SOPs and tightened things up, no, you know, not to reference Titans, but just, you know, in general, give me like the step-by-step on what they did from day one to turn that culture around in 2008, 2009 to the accomplished results where now it's a self-perpetuating, you know, culture that they've instilled.
Yeah, I got to give a shout out to Josh Durhill, who I know you know.
Yeah.
But I love his comment, a well-curated vision is like a memory that just hasn't happened yet. I love that.
I like that.
Emotional memories are so vivid in my mind. You know, the birth of my children is probably the greatest, you know, the 4 greatest moments of my life, you know, and up there with Mary and my wife Chantel, and up there with scoring. I scored a professional goal on Father's Day in front of my dad, and as a pro, we could run off the field. So I literally ran in the stands and mobbed them, and that's vivid in my mind. I won't elaborate, but great leaders, and Chuck is a really, really shrewd businessman and a great leader. Look at the success that he's put up, right? But he knew exactly what he wanted. He knew exactly what he expected. And he very clearly laid out expectations that were expected to be delivered on. And there were ramifications if they were not delivered on. And then there's a massive sprinkle of curating the right people to drive that vision forward. And there's so many other things, right, Wade? But at the end of the day, Muscular Moving Men and M3 will always be a nimble startup. And we are well on our way to you know, do $100 million. But we're less focused on the $100 million target, and we're more focused on the details that will allow us to get there. And for me, that's supporting our team to get them to the next level, evaluating our team, who's the right fit, and who needs to honorably be ushered off the bus. Wade, there is honor in that. To the team member that you're working very, very hard, you provide the specificity there, and you're really marrying up the accordion. You're not vague, you're specific. The team member that can't deliver on that, probably there's a reason why they can't deliver on it. They may not have it in them. But I believe that part of treating that employee's future honorably is to allow them to get into an environment where they can thrive. Maybe they're just not meant to be on your team. Maybe they're meant and their dreams are going to be realized somewhere else. And so I really, really love, you know, and shout out to Zanzibar Vermiglio. He's got a book, and it's called Managing from What Matters. It's unbelievable. Everybody listening to this, should download it or buy that book. You're talking about a guy that was a manager at a McDonald's at 18 years old. How the heck is that possible? Read the book. But he talks openly about stewarding the future of your employees honorably and treating them with honor and dignity and respect. And sometimes you've got to turn and go, golly, it's just not working out. And it doesn't pull away from the fact that I care about you. I care about your future. We've had some long-standing employees that just could not continue to deliver on the standards that we had. And these are good people. They kind of fell out of love for the standards that we have. And tough conversations ensue. And oftentimes, Wade, when you're having same pages constantly, they're a lot easier because you're in constant connection. So there was one of our senior project managers a couple years ago, and I can remember at the end of October pulling him in and just going, I just sense that things are just not working out. And his feedback was, you're right. His exact feedback was, I've dreamt of being a master mechanic my entire life. And I've been looking into schools and I just, this is a grind and I love the organization, but you're right. And my feedback to him was, okay, how can I support you in this? You mentioned being a master mechanic and he said, look, I'm trying to hang on until the end of January because I'm going to get into school. What wonderful. How many employees have come in and said, Wade or another owner, here's my 2-week notice. By treating this employee's future honorably and advocating and working alongside him very, very closely with the leadership team played a massive role in this too. Frankly, they were connecting with him more often. But we had a 2-month advance notice to what his plans were. And frankly, here's what happened, Wade. I remember before the end of the meeting, I said to the individual, I'm so grateful for the conversation and I'm so excited for you in the future. I have one request. Shoot. I said, I need you to step back up in the interest of excellence as it relates to our standards and processes because you are a leader in our organization and people look to you. Can you do that over the course of the next 60 to 90 days? And he said, I'm on it. He was on time. He stayed late. He leaned in. We parted ways in the most beautiful. We had a big cake and a big thanks for your impact as he was going out the door. And he still comes back once or twice a year. And he's finishing up school at some point soon. And frankly, he's the kind of guy that if he told me when his graduation was, I'd show up. So is there a way that you can curate a culture and environment where people are open to say, I'm safe to come and tell you what I plan to do. And I know that you're not going to treat me dishonorably. The 2008 leader, if I went in and told him that, shoot, I wanted to play on a soccer team, an amateur soccer team after hours, and I would need to leave work at 5 or 5:30, I would be berated for it. So guess who didn't tell him something like that, Wade?
You.
Me. I went into Vince. If I did, and I didn't do this, I had young kids and I was grinding. But if I went into Vince and said, Vince, I'm thinking about playing an amateur, in an amateur soccer league. You go, have you signed up? It sounds like you're excited about it. Well, Vince, my challenge is I'm going to need to leave the office twice a week at 4:45, 5 o'clock. You'd go, leave at 4. You got to go stretch. You got to go get ready. This sounds like something you're passionate about. Yin and yang, compare and contrast. One, I want to run through a wall for. Vince calls me. I say, what do you need and how can I do it? The other calls me. I'm not picking up the phone call. Which leader are you? Is my challenge to everybody listening. And side note, we haven't even talked about commercial moving,
Yeah, commercial moving is, everything you've just said, that's all you really need to know, I feel like, because it's the culture. They say the culture eats the strategy for breakfast. And we could talk the strategy on commercial moving. You need this amount of guys to be the pushers and this amount of guys to lay the floor protection and be the technicians and all this stuff. And the only reason I know those terms is because, well, A, I've worked with Ed Katz, but B,
yep.
B, we used to share an office with a commercial moving company when we were first starting out. So yeah, it's a whole other animal that you have to work with people of all different levels. And I think that's a big challenge in the moving business. I've always say, affectionately that people in moving are our inventory. We're not a retail business where things sit on the shelf for 3 months at a time. Like we have living, breathing people with families that dictate the capacity of the work that we do and the quality of the work that we do. We're not ordering some schematic from, China or India from whatever factory does it the best. Like, we're finding these people in our communities, and we're giving them a job, and we're responsible for supporting their families. And I think, what you're laying right now is the foundation for anybody who wants to get into commercial moving or just improve their residential moving company before they can even worry about all of the ins and outs and the how to build a quote and how to find the leads. And there's a conversation to be had about that maybe we do another time. But this is stuff that can be applied to really any business.
That's right.
And one thing that I've found is there's levels to business. You've got the startup company who starts from $0 and goes to $1 million. That's a journey in and of itself. And then the 1 million to the 3 to 5 million range, and then the 5 to the 10, and then the 10 to the 20, and the 20 to the 50, and the 50 to the 100, and so on and so forth. And JK started essentially at 0 and are in the hundreds. M3, muscular moving men, basically the same thing. The people that get you from one to the next are usually not the same people that get you to that level and beyond. Would you agree or disagree with that?
Agreed. We constantly are evaluating our team on a quarterly basis across the board. Very simple exercise that we execute, but there's constant evaluation. Our goal is to win the Super Bowl every single year. But, we're in an industry, it's so funny, Wade. Like, we're in an industry where everybody wants to compare each other to everybody else. How much revenue did you do? It's like, it's so funny. And I understand comparison. We're human beings. We've been comparing each other since we were pre-K. You got a blue lollipop. I got a red lollipop. I like blue. It's kind of the nature of the beast. But this is also very, very important for your visionary leaders, and I'm the integrator within our organization. So my job is to operationalize the vision that we have. My job is to put rocket fuel in where Justin and Josh want to go. And then I'm a visionary from a commercial perspective. And I my personality, I'm an architect. So I can go and help curate top vision, big vision, and I can go below the line into the spreadsheets and get really geeky and analytical and produce data, and my energy is not zapped either way. But we've got huge targets and huge goals, and you have to evaluate your team. In my experience, you have to evaluate your team on how they're doing in the current environment, and also whether they have the bandwidth, they get it, want it, and have the capacity to do it, to curate or be a part of the vision. And that's really tricky to do, but it's certainly helped us. And there are mission critical members of our team, Wade, that fit into our vision in the future, but it's likely that they need to pivot some roles to maximize the ROI and for them to be all that they can be in their role in the future environment. So then it's kind of, you're attempting to reverse engineer an outcome that hasn't come to fruition yet. What skills, what processes, who do they need to become to be able to deliver what you want them to be delivering on in the future? So, and then systems and processes are the same thing. Do the systems and processes that you have internally in your organization support that individual or individuals, or do they not? Do you not have any systems and processes? That organization, and there may be listeners, there may be owners that are doing absolutely everything. Yep. Been there. Do you have autonomous systems such that you can take off and you can be gone? How did M3 get to where M3 is? The reality is it's a blend of so many different things. It's hard to curate. Great people, great systems and processes, and a lot of hard work. But my goal is that I'm absentee, and I'm very, very close to being there, Wade. I'm removed from so many of the things that we're doing on a day-to-day basis, and I look at that and say it's a wonderful thing because I've got huge dreams, huge aspirations, and I've got a vision to change the industry. In order to do that, I can't be working in the business every single day.
Right.
I trust my team to execute in line with the vision that I've curated along with Josh and Justin, and Josh and Justin are the same. So, for those that are listening, there is a path to do that. There is a playbook, if you will. It's just, you know, is that what you want? Do you have the personnel to do it? And if Wade turns and says, hey, I want the organization to become a $500 million company, we got to look at people, we got to look at systems, we got to look at processes. And are you willing to do that? You take a bunch of humble pie when somebody turns, and I had a dear friend and mentor of mine kind of look at things 3-4 years ago, and he said, Jim, you're not ready. You're not ready for this unless I would recommend that you look here, 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 and here. And we've taken that on, and he was 100% right. Our business has continued to scale without me being the driving factor to the business scaling. Wade, so
that's the goal. And a quote that I love, it's from Tommy Mello, who's right there in your backyard with A1 Garage Store, if you know him, and right in your neighborhood there.
Yep.
He says, as a leader, you need to have a dream so big that everybody else's fits inside. And that hit for me. Yep. I think that, you have that same passion. And I'm curious, as we wrap this podcast up, where is Muscular Moving Men going? What is that dream so big that everybody else's will fit inside? What is the roadmap for you guys over the next, 3, 5, 10 years? And how are you going to get there? What's the plan?
Wade, we're in the lab and we're working on it, but we know what it is. It's just very, very, very close to the best. It's being curated right now. We've got the team to take it on. It has the legs to change the industry. I mean, it certainly does. And there's some big things that are coming in the pipe. I'll tell you that. Probably, I'm so excited to get out and talk in early September. I'm so honored that you and Chad asked me to come out to Clearwater, and I can't wait to get up and connect with titans in the industry.
We're honored to have you. Thank you for coming out.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. And I probably will be able to say more when I'm out there, but we're knee deep working on it, which is a lot of fun. A lot of fun. It's for me, I think I've come to realize that I'm at my best when I'm doing things that bring me a lot of energy. And so more than anything, I mean, I gave up alcohol coming up on 3 years ago. It was an energy play. And I may have had a problem. I mean, I was one of those guys that would pack it on Friday and Saturdays, but it was an energy thing. So my vision work is done 5 o'clock in the morning on Saturdays and Sundays. I cannot, we're shooting this on Friday. I cannot wait until tomorrow morning. I'll grab my cup of coffee and my mind will wander and I get to just do fun, creative things that bring me energy. And then I'll go work out. And I'm uninhibited by the fact that I didn't have 4 old fashions.
Yeah.
So, and again, I'm 41 years young. So I've got another 60 years to go. And for me, it's I think my purpose is heavily aligned in helping others. And that hopefully will come out in the next, sub 60 days, because the hope is that I can kind of talk about some of that openly out in Clearwater.
Yeah, well, we're super excited to have you, and I'm right there with you. Those weekends, those quiet hours when nobody else is up, when the world is still sleeping, and you have it at your fingertips. That's where some of the most important work gets done, and that's curating the vision that you've talked so much about here today. And we're super pumped to have you in September. For those of you who are listening and don't know, September 2nd to the 4th in Clearwater Beach, Florida, the Moving Titan Retreat. Jim Stevens is one of our many featured speakers that are just absolute titans of industry, just leaders, proprietors, pioneers in this industry that'll be there. And I'm really excited. You're keeping me on the edge of my seat with what this rollout is, this project in the lab. And I truthfully don't know what it is yet, but I was hoping to squeeze a little bit of hints out.
Well, you'll be one of the first to know, Wade. You honor me, and it's been a privilege, man. And I commend you on what you're doing, and what you, Chad, and Faith are doing, because there's no doubt about it. It's bringing a lot of value to those that really want a sense of community and really want to improve their business. And we need it. We're in an industry that's often neglected, that needs better standards, better processes, and we need to elevate each other. And the fact that you guys are playing a big role in that is something that I deeply, deeply admire. So I just can't wait to get out there with you and rub shoulders with a bunch of titans in the industry.
Awesome. Well, we're all working together to elevate the standard in the industry, because you're absolutely right. It's got a stigma that doesn't need to be there. It's behind a lot of the other service industries, and and there's no reason it should be. We like to surround ourselves with people that are along for that mission as the greater good and have that mentality of abundance. And you guys certainly have that, and love what you've built to this day. I mean, it's extremely impressive. And I took a lot of notes, a lot of wisdom that you instilled just in this 1 hour. And I wish we could continue to go, but unfortunately we've got to get back to building those dreams. So Jim, thank you for coming on the Grow Your Moving Company podcast. It's been an honor and a pleasure to have you here, and I'm counting down the days to see you down in my stomping grounds.
That's right.
But thank you for coming on, Jim. This has been great. Let's stay in touch in the meantime, and we'll see you soon.
Likewise, Wade. Thanks.
All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning into the Grow Your Moving Company podcast. Until next time, tighten up. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Grow Your Moving Company podcast. If you would like to learn more about any of the sponsors listed on this show, want to apply for the next Moving Titan retreat, or interested in owning or working for Two College Brothers franchise, drop me a line at wade@twocollegebrothers.com. Moving out. Have a great day.